Hi, so today we're going to talk about rule suspensions that are heard on the floor of the California State Assembly. In both houses of the legislature, legislators can vote to suspend the rules governing different procedures. Those watching state assembly floor sessions in the California legislature may hear the majority floor leader rise and seek unanimous consent to suspend a number of different assembly rules. Assembly Rule 7 describes the process of suspension of the rules and provides that any of the standing rules of the Assembly may be suspended temporarily by a vote of a majority of the members of the Assembly. Also, a temporary suspension applies only to the matter under immediate consideration and in no case extends beyond an adjournment. So the following are some of the more common assembly rules that you might hear being suspended on the floor of the California State Assembly. The first is Assembly Rule 45.5, which provides presentation of guests or memorials in the assembly. Basically, the rules do not prohibit the speaker or speaker pro tem from permitting the introduction of a special guest or guests, but a request that a session of the assembly adjourn in memory of a person has to be made in writing, and the request is read by the presiding officer immediately prior to adjournment. And so a suspension of this rule is usually requested in order to allow a guest in the assembly gallery to be introduced to the entire body or to speak on an adjournment in memory of a deceased individual on the floor of the assembly. Assembly Rule 56 deals with meetings of standing committees and subcommittees and says that they're required to meet at the specified hour and place provided by the schedule that's established by the speaker. And generally, the suspension of this rule is requested in order to allow a policy committee of the assembly to meet at a different time or day than the committee normally meets. Then there's Assembly Rule 96, which deals with the motion to withdraw or re-refer bills. And here it is generally done to another committee, like re-refer a bill from one committee to another. And the motion is only debated as to the proprietary nature of the reference. It's a vote of 41 members of the assembly. And this rule is usually suspended because the request is to withdraw a bill from one policy committee and re-refer that bill to a different policy committee, either because the substance of the bill changed or it was misreferred initially. Another one is Assembly Rule 118, which deals with persons admitted to the floor of the assembly, where it says that only members of the legislature, the officers or employees of the legislature, as well as accredited members of the press, and generally guests are prohibited from being on the floor of the assembly during any session. However, a suspension of this rule is usually requested in order to allow a guest, most often a family member, to be on the floor of the assembly while they're in session, often to sit with the legislator at his or her desk.